Good afternoon. My name is Renata, and I am here with our friend and coach Ryan Hill of hillrunner.com. And today we're going to talk about goal setting and how to prepare and how to set goals for your full or half marathon. And real quick, I'm going to let Ryan talk about himself and tell us a little about who you are and how you got involved in being a coach.
Well, thank you, Renata. As you said, I'm Ryan. I got started running. I'll try to do this quickly, but I got started running back in 1990, actually, when a couple friends just talked me into going out for track, and I had the incredible fortune of having a great coach as my first track coach, and he guided me into distance running, and he saw something in me. I wasn't a great runner when I started, but I worked hard. I had some great coaching along the way. I started hillrunner.com actually when I was in college because the great coaching I had, I wanted to give something back. I had such a great opportunity with the coaches I had, both two coaches in high school and my college coach. I just felt that they had done so much for me. I felt like I wanted to give something back. So I started hillrunner.com as a way to do that. And I try to share freely as much as possible on hillrunner.com. And then in the early 2000s, I started just on the side helping some runners. I would see runners in forums or other places say, I'm struggling with this, I don't know what to do, and I just kind of reach out and ask them, would you like to talk about what's going on? And so I guess that was a start informally of when I got into coaching, and then in 2000.
It's almost like a running counselor, right?
Well, in fact, at first I was calling myself an advisor more than a coach. Especially in the early 2000s, I didn't like the term coaching because we didn't have the same technology available as we do now. There's a lot more you can do now. So in 2010, I think made things more formal and started officially coaching runners. I've only run 2 marathons myself, but I ran a 2:40 in the Chicago Marathon in 2005, and that's about it. I love helping runners. Like I said, I feel like it's a great thing to do, to give back for everything that running has done for me.
Nice. So tell us briefly, if somebody's never been to hillrunner.com, what kind of things would they find there? Why would somebody want to go to the website?
Well, I keep a blog on there, and as well, it's not just me. I give everyone who registers the ability to blog if they want to. So it's not a one-voice blog. To be honest, not many posts show up that are not mine. But if someone wants to say something, if someone sees something that they really want to write about, they're welcome to do it. I also have, we might be mentioning a little later, the calculators portion of the site, which I think is a useful tool for helping setting goals, give you some ideas of maybe what ranges your training paces should be in. I do have a training log over there. Yeah, as you can see, I was doing some work this morning to roll out a new format for the site.
Nice.
As well, I have, for the running fans out there, I have a portion on the news, and I sometimes blog about what's going on. We did a live blog of Boston Marathon as an example. Um, so those are the primary areas of the site.
Excellent, excellent. Well, thank you for that intro, and I wanna go ahead and get to the questions here and talk about goal setting. So, I guess first of all, if somebody's running, they have a goal race in mind that they're planning for, and they know they want to set a goal and just don't know where to start. Talk about what are the different types of goals that you can set for a race. Like, what are the different options out there?
Well, of course, for some runners, the goal is just to get to the finish line, and I would add the goal should be to get to the finish line healthy.
Yes.
I see so many runners, especially first timers, they get to the finish line, they're limping, they hurt something, and I don't like that.
No,
I don't think anyone would like
I don't
that.
think they like it either.
So to me, the big thing is not just get to the finish line, but get to the finish line healthy. Um, of course, some runners are thinking of goals kind of set for them by others, such as Boston Marathon qualifier,
Sure.
or they want to get into a certain starting corral at a big event like Chicago, where if you run faster, when I ran it, if you run faster than 3:20, you get in the corral right behind the elites. If you run faster than something else, you get in a further back corral. So maybe you want to move up, which is a fun target to shoot for. Other races like New York City have qualifying times to bypass the lottery. So there are a lot of qualifying times out there if you look around, and they can make fun targets to shoot for, because you can say, I got my BQ, I qualified for Boston, or I'm in the competitive corral at Chicago, or I'm able to bypass the lottery at New York. And then there are more just personal time goals. Maybe you want to break 4 hours, or if you're faster, maybe break 3 hours. And those are great goals too. And I like that they're personal goals, because you put an investment into making that goal. Now you can put an investment into achieving it.
Right. Right.
So
Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think those are the primary kinds of goals you see out there.
That makes sense. So it seems like a number of goals are kind of built in. If it's your first time doing a full or half marathon, then primarily your goal is going to be finishing probably. Or like as you were saying, if you're trying to qualify for Boston or get into one of those larger races, there's kind of an easy path to what your goal might be maybe. But say I've been running a few marathons. I'm not trying to do one of those clear-cut goal races. How do I decide what my goal should be, like how I should structure, what my goal is? Talk a little bit about that. If it's my first time actually even setting a goal, where do I start and how do I base that on?
Well, the first thing you do, of course, you've run one or more marathons in the past at this point. You look back to those and you say, what time did I run? What kind of course was it, of course, because, I don't remember the course profile of Seattle, but it seems like it was probably a fairly fast course.
It depends. There's definitely some hill section in there. So if you're prepared for, well, that slows everybody down.
So if you look at what you ran before, if the course looks faster or slower than when you go to Seattle, you make an adjustment on that, and then you say, what could I have done differently in the race, and how would that have affected me? Did I go out too fast, which is a common mistake. I've done it. or what could I have done differently in training? And you think about how you can structure this race differently. And okay, you think through it, you say, I can do things differently in training, I can go out a little more slowly, I think I can take 10 or 15 minutes off my time. So then you say, I ran 4:30. And this is another thing I like to do with goals. Maybe I set a pie in the sky goal of 4:15. And then I say, well, that's if all my training goes perfectly, I execute the perfect race, so the weather's perfect, I got 4:15, I can do that. If things aren't quite as perfect, maybe I shoot for 4:20. And if it's just a bad day, maybe I try to beat 4:30 that I ran last time.
Yeah. So that's cool. A cool thought to kind of have almost interval goals of, like you said, the best case scenario, or being realistic about what might happen. And I like that kind of what's most important to you as a runner would be what you focus on for your goal. So if time is important for you, it sounds like, then that you can base it on that. But maybe, like you were saying, it's how you feel afterwards. If you realize last time you went out way too fast and you want to do better, and that's what's important to you, that you don't make that mistake again, then that's how you structure your goal for the next time.
Absolutely. If you don't like how you felt, especially if you cross that finish line hurt or injured, your big goal might be, I want to feel good at the fit. Well, of course, after 26 miles, there's only so good you're going to feel, but that might be the goal. I want to feel better. I don't want to injure myself this time. I want to be able to walk normally after the race.
Right.
So
okay.
those are very good goals too. I don't mean to discount goals that aren't based on time. It just that's what most people talk about, to be honest.
Right. Absolutely. So what about, so we talked about somebody who's got a few races under their belt and they kind of know they've got something to start from, something to judge it off of, but say this is their first actual race. How do you even begin to set a goal for that? How does that look like?
Well, hopefully it's your first race of this distance. And I say that because if you have some races of shorter distances, and I'm a big fan of running a few as you're preparing also, because they let you practice race day. They let you practice taking your fluids and things like that. The other thing they do is they give you some times to go on. If you run maybe a 10K a 10K in August, let's say.
I wonder if we know of any of those.
If you run a 10K in August, you can finish and say, well, I felt good finishing in 50 minutes. And, well, you might say, what does that mean? That's where, as I mentioned, the calculators section of the site on hillrunner.com has a calculator. So you go over there, you punch in 50 minutes for 10K, and if I do that real quickly, it says that I should be able to run a marathon in just under 3:50. Now, the one thing I would say about that is the calculator can be a little aggressive. So if I run a 50-minute 10K, I might think about 4 hours.
Okay.
You need to put in 42.2 if you're doing kilometers.
There we go, I see.
So right around 50 minutes. Or right around 3:50, I mean. So that's fine. Like I said, I would be a little conservative on that because the calculator, one of the things I think I may have noted down there, it assumes that you're, air quotes, equally well trained for all distances, and a marathon is a long way.
Sure.
Most people are more well trained for shorter distances than spending hours out on the road.
Right.
So I would be a little conservative off those times. So,
Okay.
like I said, 350, I would probably say, especially for a first timer, 4 hours would be a good top level goal. And then maybe you build in a couple slower goals as backup.
Excellent. Excellent. So you may have kind of gotten into this. So now we've talked about an individual, they're a runner, and they're trying to set their own goal. So as a coach, coming from your perspective, if somebody comes to you and they're looking to set a goal, what's that process look like of you working with them to make that goal happen? What are the things you ask them, and how do you get to that end result where now you've got a goal in hand?
Well, the first thing I do is say, the first question I ask all the time is, what are you thinking of? Because you need to have ownership of your goals. I always start with, what are you thinking of? And from there we can talk, we can look at race history. Have you run some races in the past? Again, even if they aren't marathon, you can go to the calculator and kind of figure out what that 50-minute 10K or that 2-hour half marathon or whatever other race, what it means toward what you can run a marathon in. And from there, we look over training together. We look over, like I said, race results. And we talk about what are you willing to do in your training going forward. So if you're really willing to step up your training to another level, your goal can be more aggressive. If you're not willing or not able, you have too much going on at home or at work, and this is a level you can stay at, well then, the goal has to be accordingly set.
Okay, I'm gonna interrupt you. So let's say I've got a few half marathons under my belt. I go to your calculator and I say, I think I'm pretty sure that I can do a 340 marathon, and I don't have that much time to train, and I'm pretty sure that I can just knock it out. And you, as a coach, realistically, you're going, well, that's probably not, based on what you were just saying, how you kind of assess what they're willing to do and where they're at. What do you say? How do you kind of let them down gently, or not let them down gently? what do you do kind of to get them, to coach them to a more appropriate goal?
Well, I always try to be gentle. What I'll do is I'll just talk about, okay, this is what you're willing to commit to, and okay, when I look at what you're willing to commit to, I see, sometimes it's hard to put a specific time, but so maybe I don't say I see a 350, but maybe I say, I'm not sure I see 340 there. And what I'll often say is, let's keep 340 in mind. Let's not rule it out right now because we don't know what the coming months will bring. So let's keep it in mind, but let's work on the training. And are you okay if we have to change the goal to 350 or 4 hours down the road?
Yeah.
And I never some of the people I coach set very aggressive goals, and I like I when I was training and racing at my peak, I loved to set aggressive goals for myself, and I would often fall a little short. But another thing is if you can recognize, hey, I was shooting for this time, I came close.
Yeah.
I didn't quite get that, but look at how far I came to get as far as I did. Right. And can you still be happy with it? And right. And if I get the feeling the person can be happy with it, I say let's keep it out there. And you know, if you end up running 3:43, are you going to be okay with that?
Right.
Because that's still a huge accomplishment.
That's awesome. You sound like a very gentle, a very nice coach.
I try to be.
I love that. I love that. Okay, so now you've got somebody, you've gotten to a reasonable goal, and now you're working with them along the way. How do you, or maybe you're not face to face with somebody, but how do you suggest that people stay motivated toward that goal? So now they've got, I don't know, do they have a plan in place? What does that portion look like?
Well, again, tune-up races are great because you have
was that tune-up? Did you say tune-up?
Tune-up. like you go tune up your car.
Okay, tune-up, got it.
Because yes, I have that goal, but it's out there in the end of November. Man, that's a long time away. Mm-hmm. So okay, I have a 10K in August. Well, maybe I also have a 10K in June. Maybe I put in a half marathon in late September or early October. And I think the cat's talking to me. I think it's coming through. So those get those incremental goals. Now I say, hey, it's May and I have a race coming up in June. So I have something to work for.
Yeah.
And then June's over. Well, now I have a race coming up in August. And, maybe we set some intermediate targets.
Okay.
So you want to run that 4-hour marathon. I want to see you running a 50 or 52-minute 10K in August. Mm-hmm. If I don't see you do that, I'm not sure you can get down to 4 hours in November.
Yeah.
So that gives you some motivation. That gives you some motivation to get out there and run these times that say, yes, I can break 4 hours or something along that line. As well, that's also why I like to ask you what you're thinking of, because if you set your goal for yourself, you're taking ownership of that goal, and you'll be more committed to it. If I come along and say, hey, I think you should go for 3:45, and you don't take ownership of it, you're not as committed to it.
That makes sense.
And as well, just a little trick that goes back, I think I've done it back even in my high school days. I would take little 3x5 index cards, and I'd write my time goal on it, or I'd write whatever I want to do, and then I put it on the mirror in the bathroom. Or I'd put my time goal on my screensaver on my computer, and just always have it in front of my face.
Yeah.
And you'd be surprised how effective that can be to always see your goal there.
Wow.
And whenever you see it, you say, okay, I have to do the work for this.
I like that. That's really neat. So really bring in that visualizing the goal. And I'm just wondering, so having the incremental races lined up in between to really help keep you motivated, which is awesome, but sometimes those races can be pricey, or maybe this is somebody who they don't have that many nearby their area. Are there any other tips to kind of along the way, especially towards the end, as they're getting closer to the race and keeping them motivated, just any additional tips or tricks that you would throw out there?
Well, if you can't do a race, or the races in your area are out of your price range or something like that,
Mm.
you can, it's not quite the same as a race, but you can do a time trial on a local race course, or even go to a local track.
Mm.
The track, it gets a little mind-numbing, but that can be good training for a marathon, because I'll tell you, miles 15 to 20 in a marathon can get a little mind-numbing themselves
Wow.
sometimes.
Yeah.
So actually, some people go to the track to work on that, building focus. But back to the original question, you can go there and you can do some time trials. Like I said, it's not the same as a race. I can never run a time trial even close to the same time I run a race. Just that race day atmosphere gets the adrenaline going and gets you fired up and lets you run that much harder. But it's still a way to do it. You can also build some workouts. I'm a big fan, in the last few months especially, of doing some goal pace workouts for the people with time goals. And if toward the beginning, if you can run 10 miles and stay very relaxed at marathon pace, that's a good sign. Eventually, maybe you build it up to 15. For more advanced runners with a higher base, they might even go to 18. I know some people who go as high as 20 at pace. I usually stick more around 18 as a max. But those can be target workouts where I want to do 15 miles at my Boston qualifier pace, let's say,
Right.
and I want to feel good at the end of this.
Nice. Nice. That makes sense. So, okay, that's good. What I guess what happens when there's somebody who doesn't have a great coach like you, or any coach at all, and they get going, and they've been motivated, they've been doing the work, but they're finding out, man, I just don't. I think I need to reassess my goal. What would you suggest to kind of uh, come up with something that's going to be, they weren't able to successfully come up with an appropriate goal in the beginning, how what's a way to kind of narrow target in on something that's going to be more realistic now that they've already kind of got started? Maybe say it is August, and they did their 10K, and they realize, ooh, yeah, that 350 definitely is not going to happen. What would you suggest then?
Well, then you need to just go back and kind of take a step back. It's difficult to do. I mean, you invest in your goal. A lot of people get emotionally attached to it, so you kind of have to step back and take the emotion out of it, and say, just lay out the facts for yourself. Okay, I ran 52 minutes, and that 350 isn't looking real good right now. That doesn't mean you can't get back on track, but I think you have to look at the facts, and you have to say, okay, this time suggests that maybe a 4-hour goal is more reasonable for me. And I think a lot of it is just taking that emotion out and looking at the facts, looking at the numbers, looking at your training. It's possible. Maybe you look at everything and you say, I just put in a huge block of training. I was running on very tired legs. Maybe I'm still okay. Otherwise, you might look back and say, I missed in some of my training. And, it happens to all of us.
Sure.
Work things come up, family emergencies come up, and, running, we're not professionals. Running is not our number one priority. So maybe you look at those things and you say, well, these things happen, so it's okay.
Hmm.
And I keep going back to these emotional feelings, but it really, the hardest part of changing your goal, especially while making your goal faster if everything goes
Sure.
great, is easy. Um, but the hardest part of dialing back your goal is that emotional feeling
Mm-hmm.
of, and it's not a failure. I think that's what a lot of people feel is I failed. Now I have to adjust my goal back, and it not necessarily a failure. It can just be, something out of your control, and
That's
you
great. Yeah, I really like that because I think you're right about that emotional um, tie. Like, I mean, you were saying putting it everywhere and having it in front of you and you visualize it and like you said, becomes a part of you. And that's part of what you want in choosing a goal is to be able to have that investment in it. But then to be honest with yourself and when you realize that that's not what is going to be reality, to then, like you said, disconnect. I can totally see that being the challenging part, and I love the just comment that you made that it's not a failure, because I can imagine that that's really key in people trying to continue with something that's not appropriate for them, with a goal that really isn't best for them, because otherwise they're letting themselves down or they're failing in some other way. So that's amazing. See, you are we're gonna dub you the gentle coach, the sensitive coach, the caring coach.
I try
I
to
like
be. I don't like. I was just reading something the other day about. Maybe I even blogged about it about supportive coaches, and I've always believed coaches should be supportive. I don't like the old school football mentality of the I don't want to say some of the words, but
yeah,
the hard driving coach.
yeah, we know what you mean. Very cool. So, and that's part of what you talked about in the beginning of what even got you into coaching was just that care and that support that you received personally. So it totally makes sense that that would be your style and what works for you and what you see that gets results in other people. So that
Yes,
totally makes sense.
I did learn from some very supportive coaches and coaches who even when I was my first race, I'll just throw this out there right now. My first race was 800 meter, 2 laps on the track. I almost got lapped by a teammate. And,
Mm,
there would probably be some coaches out there who would have said throw in the towel. You're never going to be any good. And my coach stuck with me, and
mhm.
by my senior year of high school, I was conference champion. So.
Fantastic. Wow. Wow.
So that support, that you know believe in your goals, believe in yourself. It can take you a long way if you give it a chance.
I love it. So good. Maybe you should go be a coach for coaches. You might have something there. Think about it. Think about it. Let's talk for a minute about pacers. So most large races they have them available and they've got your times that you can choose from. Talk to me how you feel about using pacers and how to best get the benefit out of working using a pacer.
Well, I think the Pacers, and does Seattle have Pacers? I believe I saw they do.
Yes, we
Um,
do have Pacers, and we've got them for nearly all of the Boston qualifying times, and some even extended times for somebody who's not necessarily trying to qualify for Boston. And those are on our website as well, seattlemarathon.org.
so I do like Pacers. I think they're great, especially in the early miles, to keep you
Mm.
honest, to keep you from going out to it. Let me tell you, it is very hard
Huh.
when you're really fit and when you're tapered and your legs are fresh it is really hard to hold back those first 5 or 10 miles. And when I ran Chicago, I did go out way too fast for the first 2 miles, and I felt like I was jogging. I didn't see the first mile mark. There's so many people around. I just missed it, I think. And when I saw the 2 mile mark and I saw the clock, I freaked out. And I felt like I was jogging. And that's the problem a lot of people have. It feels so easy, you don't even realize what you're doing. So the pacers, a good pacer will get you out on pace. And they will take you through those. I think the most critical miles a lot of time are those first 5 to 10 miles. And they will get you through without going too fast, which is the key in those miles. You just want to sit back and relax at that point. So they'll help you get through it. And then, of course, in the late miles, they're there. I've heard from pacers, and I've heard from people who have used pacers of how, the pacer is out there just, cheering you on the whole way in. And, when the crowds get thin, if they get thin around 22 or 23 miles, it's tough. So having someone there alongside you, cheering you on, pulling you through, can really, really help you at that point too. And of course, the whole way, it's good to have someone with you. Especially most pacers have quite a bit of marathon experience. So that's all good. I do love the idea of pacers. The one thing I would say is still take ownership in your own race.
Yeah.
You never know. I've heard stories of pacers deciding they want to bank some time, or just not realizing it, going out at the wrong pace. And I'm not trying to scare anyone away from the pacers. Most pacers do a very good job, but you have to take ownership in your own run. This is your run, your goal, your training that you're putting on the line. So in the end, you can't just hand your race day execution over to the pacer. You have to make sure, that you're doing what you're supposed to be doing.
And I was going to ask about that, and I'm sorry for being unobserved for a minute. Our friend Ed is trying to connect here, so I was trying to make sure he got invited. But I was going to ask you if it's my first time using a pacer, how do I balance, trying to utilize them to the fullest, but also, like you said, taking responsibility of keeping in my race. So, maybe do I try to stay at their heels the whole time, or, is it okay if I lag, but then how do I make sure that I catch back up? What's a good way to kind of balance that if I'm trying to use a pacer?
Well, the first thing I would suggest when you're working with a pacer is talk to them before the race even starts. I don't know if your pacers will be available at the expo.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So, I'm going there. I want to run 3:30. I go find that 3:30 pacer and I talk to them, and I say, "How are you planning on pacing this?" And what I hope to hear is, I'm going to focus on even pace. Maybe start out a little bit slow, but mostly focus on even pace, and take you through. Or, you said there's some hills, and I remember there were some hills in the course profile. I just didn't remember how big they were. Even effort. The uphill miles are going to be a little slower. Sure. The downhill will be a little faster, but I'm going to take you through even effort. I want to hit the half in 1:45, and I want to hit the 5 mile mark, the 10 mile mark, all at 3:30 pace. And that's what I want to hear. If I hear the pacer say, I want to go out at 320 pace to bank some time, then what I'm going to say is, okay, thank you. I'll be watching you from a distance in the early miles.
That's good.
And that's how I would decide what to do. Well, of course, during the race, of course, you want to see, are they executing the plan?
True.
If the 330 pacer says I want to run, even splits the whole way, that's great. Are they doing it on race day, or are they still going out at 320 pace? But then I would basically, how would I run with the pacer? First of all, there's probably a group, so you don't have to be right on their heels. You can just be somewhere in the group. Second, I would say, yes, if they're banking time, fall back a little bit and know that they're going to slow down at some point. And one of the things I like to do is when they're slowing down, you catch up to them, and you get energy when you start passing people. You get fired up, and it feels good. It sounds bad, but
it's reality.
Even to people who aren't competitive, when you start passing people, you get fired up. And if your pacer wants to go out faster, people are going to slow down. The pacer is probably going to slow down.
Yeah.
So it's a chance for you to see these people coming back and see that you're gaining on them, and kind of get some energy that way.
Mm-hmm. So I like the idea of utilizing kind of what's available to you on the course. So like you were talking about, even just the pacers, and they're cheering you on, and knowing, still keeping track of where you are on the course and how you're doing with time. So like we've got split timers that are they're definitely at every aid station, which is every 2 miles on the Seattle Marathon course. They might even be every mile, but kind of making sure that you're keeping track of, where the time's at and where the pacer's at if you're deciding to use one. So I really like just how you're pointing out, taking advantage of all those resources and those things that are available on the course. I want to, before we do like final words, I know that Ed is with us. He's he's watching. I sent you an invitation, Ed. I don't know if you got it, but perhaps you can throw in some words on the chat. Let's see. I don't know if you can get on the chat, or maybe if you want to throw it in the question box, Ed, of just some thoughts about how you've used goal setting with your training, and what's worked for you. Maybe, I don't know. We'll test this out and see how it works for the chat, and in the meantime, see if we can get you actually on video. But while you're doing that, let's go back to Ryan, and I guess I want to ask, what we've kind of talked a lot about people who are newer to goal setting, or maybe even it's their first time running a marathon. If somebody has run a bunch of races and they're ready to do something new with their time, what main tips would you give them? Like they know how to set a goal, but as far as actually making sure that they're attaining that, what kind of tips would you suggest? So this is a seasoned racer, but they're again they're trying to do something new. They're trying to take their race to a new level. What kind of tips would you give them?
Well, it's different for everyone, of course, because everyone's doing something a little different.
Yeah.
So I would say, look at what you've done in the past. Look at where maybe your training fell a little short. I like pace runs, I mentioned, and I know they're gaining in popularity. So have you done at least a few pace runs of 15 to 18 miles. Have how do your long runs look? Are you doing you know we focus so much on long runs and pace runs that sometimes we forget to do the shorter pace work, the quicker work, the 5K efforts, the 10K efforts, and those make you more efficient, and they make your marathon pace feel easier. So have you got enough of those? And I usually would start by looking for those holes in the training, and we all have holes. You can't fill every hole. So just look at the places that maybe there's a little more something you could do, and maybe that means you have to remove something. But if you've been doing 5 20-mile, for a very serious marathoner, if you've been doing 5 20-mile long runs before every marathon, maybe you don't need 5 before every marathon going forward. Maybe 2 or 3 would be enough, and then you could work in a few longer pace runs, or you can work in some workouts of half-mile repeats at 5K effort, which again will make you more efficient and give you more higher end speed and make that marathon pace feel easier. So I would look for those things. If you've had issues with injuries, I'm a big fan, and I'm growing a bigger fan all the time of what I've seen termed auxiliary training. Basically, what I do is strength training I do in my living room. I like the idea for runners of doing things that you can do in your own home.
Yeah.
Those will even out some of your strength imbalances. It will increase your work capacity. It will make you stronger so you can do more training. And of course, the more training you can do, the more options you have to fill those holes. And most importantly, if you have an injury history, the best way to get faster is to be more consistent.
Yeah.
The best way to be more consistent is to not get hurt.
That definitely makes sense.
So that training that keeps you healthier, that for me it's 3 days a week, about 15 or 20 minutes. I do it after my daughter goes to bed. It's almost out of sight, out of mind type training, and it raises my work capacity, so I can train harder. I can go harder on the hard days, and maybe get a little more out of the easy days while doing that.
That's good. That's good. So basically, what I heard, because everybody's different, you have to know what your situation is and where, just being honest with yourself of where your strengths and maybe the weaknesses are in your past, in your history in races and training, to kind of know what to shoot for and know. I love that you talked about areas where you may need to cut back or cut out certain things because to allow more time for actual focus on like the speed enhancing or the efficiency. So that, and I don't know if that's something that a lot of runners who have been doing it for a while really think of when they're trying to do something new, to stop doing or to kind of cut back on what's worked for them in the past in order to make room for the new. So that's great. And Ed is contributing here. Let's see. He's got a couple things. He says, I use goal setting for my motivation, I usually set my goals a bit too lofty, and Coach Hill is excellent at tweaking the goal without making me feel bad about how lofty I set that goal. So I don't know if, and I haven't mentioned this, Ed is actually a friend, and he is a client of
Yes.
hillrunner.com.
Yes,
And
Ed and I have been working together for about 3 years now. So um, yes, he hasn't yet done a marathon in that time. I believe he has one or two marathons in his past, but he wants to um, build up his shorter distances a little faster before he tackles a marathon again.
nice.
So yes, he and I have been working together for about 3 years. He's one of them that, like I said, I did when I was more competitive. He sets aggressive goals. He falls short of them sometimes, but he keeps that mindset of, okay, I didn't get that time, but look how far I've come.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. And then he also adds, and I don't know if you were on, Ed, when we were talking about this, and just Ryan's style of the gentle. I don't know if you heard. We're going to call him the gentle coach now, or the sensitive coach, because he doesn't make you feel bad. He also says, however, having a nice, so this is in contrast to having a lofty goal. However, having a nice low time goal gives me reason to step it up and push hard through a workout on which I feel like giving up. I want to achieve my goal and make myself, my family, and my coach proud. So yeah, using goal setting as motivation, that's fantastic. I hadn't even thought of that as almost a reverse, where you've got a goal set to kind of help you keep training, as opposed to
Yes.
thinking of training in order to reach a goal. You can do both. I mean, it works both ways.
Oh, absolutely, and that's where I was talking about those little 3x5 index cards I used to put everywhere, and my screensaver with my goal time on it. That was very motivating. I can think of a few times, I had out there, I had something posted. I want to go under 16 minutes in the 5K,
Mm-hmm.
and I had that, and I would look at that first thing in the morning. I was up late last night. 16 minutes. Let's go.
Nice, nice. That's fun. Okay, I like that. So we've got just a few minutes left here, and I kind of want to open it up for you, Ryan, if there's anything that we didn't cover or that you just want to say. You're full of encouragement, so maybe any words of encouragement that you may have, or just anything that you want to add. And Ed, if you want to add anything in the chat there, please feel free to do so.
I'm just attempting to scan my notes and see if I missed anything that I wanted to talk about. I think we got most of what I wanted to talk about. I would stress again the idea, especially for a marathon, you commit months to this one race. And if things don't go right, have a backup goal. And I would also point out, in 2002, when I ran the Lakefront Marathon over here in Milwaukee, that is a marathon that starts in the north suburbs and runs down to downtown. And we had, on race day, we had a 30-mile-an-hour wind gusting to 50 out of the south. My goal, I tore up my goal before the race even started, and tossed it up in the wind or something. There were other people in that race who were, to be honest, far better runners than me, far more talented runners. Guys who just toasted me in college. I wasn't even close to them. And they went out after their goals. They went for their goal times. And between 23 and 26 miles, I passed them.
Mm.
And the reason why is I backed off. I said, I'm not going to run that high time. I'm going to back down. I'm going to let the wind do what it is, let the wind affect my time, and get what I can out of the day.
Yeah.
And I actually I finished third place actually, and not that but I should not have been third.
Mm.
Looking at the list of starters, there's no way I should have been in the top 5, to be honest. So it was just a matter of these other guys went after it regardless of the conditions, and I just said I'm not doing that, and I had something left at the end when
Yeah.
they were hurting bad,
Yeah.
and and Seattle's on the ocean. I imagine there's some variability in the weather around there. If Lake Michigan can produce that kind of wind, I'm sure.
Yes.
So be prepared to adjust those goals if you need to. If you get a windy day or an unexpectedly hot
Mhm.
day or the rain is just pounding on you, be willing to back off.
Yeah, and what's great about that is, in a sense, there's a couple things that it brought to mind. Well, first was, as far as the field goals, how you were saying there were a lot of talented, like physically capable people out there, but you were able to succeed not just with your physical ability, but because you utilized your brain and the mental, like, okay, assessing what was going on. And so it's almost like you outran them by being smarter and by choosing to. All right, no, are you disagreeing?
Yeah, well, I
The
I
answer
feel
is
like
yes.
I yes, I did. Yeah,
That's fine. You don't have to respond to that. That was my interpretation.
I, I, I ran the smarter race on that day. I'm not going to say I'm smarter runner than them, but on that day,
Mhm.
I made the better race day adjustments. I
Right.
think that's the best way of saying it.
Absolutely, absolutely. And then the second thing that came to mind was a lot of times, we hear that push on persevering and going for the goal no matter what, right? Like not letting the circumstances change you or deter you, which has its place. But you have to be, like we've talked about earlier, you have to be honest, you have to assess what's going on and make the decision that's going to keep you safe and keep you from being injured and in pain at the end of the race.
Yes, going for the gold and everything, I totally believe in that. But you have to be realistic about it. In a 30-mile-an-hour headwind, when you're not going to get the tailwind, you have to change your plans.
Yeah.
Going for the definition of gold at that point changes.
Exactly. Exactly. Very good. Okay, I've got less than a minute, and I want to read Ed's last comments. Okay, so he says, I do want to add that Coach Hill is a great coach. Man, this guy's plugging you like crazy. I've achieved amazing new personal records every year since working with him in the 5K and the 8K, and plan to do longer distances later this year with a plan to do a marathon again in fall 2015. So this guy loves you. You've helped him reach his goals and get better in every way. And then lastly, he says, I know that Coach Hill will be an integral part of my future success. Sounds like he's writing a letter of recommendation. But with that being said, I do want to make sure that our audience knows that you are our official coach for this year's Family of Events, and they can purchase training plans with you on our website, either when they register online at register.seattlemarathon.org, or if you've already registered, you can go to seattlemarathon.org and click under training options and sign up there that way. That's it. We're completely out of time. But Ryan, thank you so much for being with us today. Ed, thank you for joining in, and I'm sorry we didn't get to get you on screen, but thank you for being here. And we're going to do this again probably once a month, and so it'll be fun.
Great.
We'll have new topics and new guests and different things. So stay tuned for information on that. That's it.
Sounds great. It's been fun. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much.